joining us, Mr. Charles Johnson. I appreciate you taking the time out of your night to spend some time with us for a little interview and a Q&A.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the invite.
You know what? You're a little quiet. I'm going to turn you up a little bit on the PA again, okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
No, actually, that fixed it.
Okay.
Okay, that works. Okay, well, yeah, thanks for joining us. This is our first official networking party as an organization, the Alliance of Austin Agorists. We're trying to get things started. But before we begin, I was doing some Googling, and I noticed that quite a bit of people share your name, Charles Johnson. And if you're not an Associate Chief Justice of the Washington State Supreme Court, an 18th century author of sensationalist pirate biographies, a physician and genealogist from San Antonio, Texas, who are you?
Well, so I'm a individualist anarchist, write at the blog radgeek.com, which has been around since the early 2000s. And I guess, I live and work out here in Alabama. I'm sort of the co-editor of the book Anarchist, Not Capitalism, together with Gary Chartier. Yeah, I've been doing sort of speaking and writing about left-wing market anarchism, individualist anarchism, counter-economics, and sort of anarchist strategy for a little more than 10 years now.
Awesome, awesome.
Well, so I guess a couple of things. One is that, so of course there are going to be contexts in which, sort of personal acquaintance and trust is important, right? If you're trying to live outside the law, sometimes you need to be able to sort of count on your relationship with the people that you're working with. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean like sort of close ideological relationships. That can mean just family that you trust. But I think, broadly, it's going to do a lot of good to try and just expand our horizons, and especially to expand our horizons in the area where we're primarily working with like gray market stuff. There's a lot of things where what we're doing is sort of rooting. It's not that it's stuff that's directly criminalized by the state. A lot of when people choose to do that, of course, is supported. But stuff that is just sort of the state tries to kind of lock down and regulate, and we're trying to move around. So, local food groups are sort of trying to meet your needs with a bit smaller of like a tax footprint. Especially with the gray market stuff, it's I think really quite easy to interact pretty broadly with people who are just interested in what you're doing. Right? When I was working with Food Not Bombs in Las Vegas, which is sort of repurposed free food, it's a gift economy project. I've interacted with all kinds of people who were just there because they were hungry and wanted some food. The one thing, so I think that in particular connections with immigrant communities are extremely valuable and extremely important where you can cultivate them. Of course, one thing to remember is that in a lot of ways it's not so much that we're like trying to enlist them. It's that they're already doing this,
right.
And if we can help them with that, then that can be mutually beneficial for both of us. Because undocumented immigrants, in particular, immigrant communities are heavily practicing counter-economists, and they're better at it than we are, and they do it all the time. And so there's actually, in a lot of ways, what we want to do is be able, definitely be able to like reach out, and in reaching out, realize that in a lot of ways, we're sort of, we try to provide services and such. There's already sort of a really flourishing, pre-existing counter-economic system there.
Right.
So this is something that I've been interested in a lot in sort of, in part because of where I come from, of course. I come from sort of social anarchist movement. And I think absolutely that first of all, emphasizing, so there's actually a fair amount of interest within some circles within the social anarchists in the idea of counter-economics. This is one of the ways in which market anarchist ideas, you know, from like me and from some of my friends who are also involved in the youve, sort of get the most traction in talking with social anarchists. And so there's definitely a lot of potential for connection there. I think one thing that you mentioned that I think is really important is that we want to stress that you know, counter-economics includes kind of, you know, for-profit commercial enterprises and trade and all that stuff, but it's not limited to it. And so we can very easily conceptualize a lot of kind of existing anarchist direct action projects as being counter-economic activity in a direct way. You know, Food Not Bombs is providing, you know, providing sort of grassroots mutual-aid food outside of the state nexus without any kind of licensing, often in the face of sort of a great deal of attempts by the state to squash them. You know, the Common Ground projects in New Orleans after Katrina were, you know, literally engaged in smuggling across, you know, armed barriers that FEMA set up. And so, you know, again, these are, in a lot of cases, these are folks we've learned from. Not just folks that we to convince. So, you know, looking at sort of non-commercial spaces and sort of non-monetary profit, the right profit that's cashed out in better social relationships or just lower cost of living is potentially be really, really valuable and really important. Also, just being able to sort of connect it with, you know, talking about counter-economics as a form of direct action is a
right. Every non-coercive action doesn't define to the state. It's not necessarily limited to the profit market. There's going to be the gift economy. Everything's involved.
That's right. And so yeah, there's definitely sort of a lot of points for some mutual contact and mutual learning, and you know, sort of helping each other out.
Right. Okay, cool.
You know, it sounds like you're doing some really great stuff, and so the primary thing that I'd say is, you know, just look at everything you're doing as so think of everything you're doing as a dandelion in the following way, right? You've got something that's growing up out of the ground, and it's really cool in itself. It's also a way that seeds get spread, right? So the relationships that you build up through what you're doing now can and should be spun off to all kinds of projects. You know, the farmers market sounds really great. You've got people who are into doing, you know, sort of jawboning about theory, as you know, I certainly like to do spin-off reading groups. But just, you know, look at sort of each thing you do as a way of building and tightening relationships, being able to reach out to new people and sort of try and actively springboard it off into new projects that sort of keep things moving and keep things kind of building, you know, from week to week and from month to month.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that. Well, I guess I should probably turn on these. Might be ideal to do that. I'm going to open this up for anyone who wants to ask any question about agorism or counter-economics. If there's any question you have at all for someone who is a little bit more knowledgeable of it than you might be, Charles Johnson, please feel free to speak up.
I have two related questions, if you don't mind. When you speak ill of capitalism, are you not really talking about truly evil corporatism, i.e., it's not true capitalism better than state-controlled socialism, i.e. communism, fascism, and related to that is not truly evil corporatism, corporatist devotion to illegal immigrants here at all linked to driving down wages for everybody across the board.
So I guess the question was maybe specifically about why he's anti-capitalist, why choose to label yourself as free market rather than anarcho-capitalist or something? Is that like close to what you're getting at?
Well, I guess you could say that again, I don't believe the problem is capitalism. When you're talking about true capitalism, what we're really dealing with is truly evil corporatism.
Okay, so yeah, Charles Johnson. I guess his question, narrowed down, is really like, why not call it corporatism? Why not call it crony capitalism? Why reject capitalism altogether and embrace market anarchism instead?
Sure. So on the question of sort of labeling on markets and capitalism, I don't want to get too hung up on sort of questions about the particular way you use the word, but the reason that we talk about this in terms, like in the book, in terms of markets, not capitalism, as a slogan, right, is because we've got a particular communicative purpose in mind, and that's to try and identify, in particular, the distinction between the market form as like a pattern of social relationships on the one hand, and the interests of capitalists as a class on the other. So people who sort of make a living primarily by sort of ownership of means of employment or ownership of land that they rent out. And the system that we have now, the system which is called capitalism by most commentators, commenting on it, is specifically a system that is systematically rigged in very deep and important ways towards promoting the interests of big businesses, bosses, and landlords, and so sort of specifically promoting the interests of a capitalist class structure. Okay, that's what we want to call attention to, and that's what we want to try and demonstrate actually to be in tension with genuine respect, sort of the genuinely disruptive and sort of dispersive features of market forms. So if you have free competition, if you have sort of a full range of entrepreneurship, if everybody's property rights are respected, regardless of class, regardless of race, regardless of nationality, then what you'll tend to get is something that looks much less like class concentration of access to wealth, and something much more like what Kant would call sort of agoric economic relationships, or sort of much more person-to-person relationships that aren't sort of filtered through big institutions.
So like maybe more co-ops pop up and stuff like that.
Yeah, more co-ops, more independent labor. People sort of institutionalized of sort of doing business, sort of in general, going to be likely to be sort of less stable, less firmly entrenched. So that's the broad idea with that. Now, in the on the question about undocumented immigrants in particular, I do want to stress that I think this is a core liberty issue. The sort of freedom to move across borders without government interference is absolutely within every individual's rights, and that this is something that needs to be respected and defended. The possible sort of economic results of migration are, it's sort of, there's plenty of economic studies we talk about sort of the likely effects of, sort of the typical effects of different kinds of immigration. But actually, at the end of the day, I don't care that much. And the reason I don't care is because even if immigrants from other countries tend to bring down wages of people in the United States, it tends to bring up wages for the people who immigrate. That's why they immigrate in the first place. And I think they have as much of a right to a decent standard of living and as much of a right to decent jobs as anybody else.
Absolutely, totally agree. Borders are completely arbitrary. But, okay, anyone else?
So I'm a small. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All
Thanks.
right, I'll speak louder. So I'm a small business owner, and I would like to know what specific ideas you have that maybe both legal and illegal that I could use in my business.
Sure. So, if you don't mind my asking, what kind of business?
I own a company called bumpersticker.com, and we make Liberty stickers and manufacture stickers for corporations and stuff.
Yeah. So first thing you can do is, if you're not already doing it, is accept it.
How are you feeling?
Can you do that yet?
Not yet, but I'm planning on it.
Cool. Yeah. So definitely, there's a really sort of active community around Bitcoin. A lot of people would be very glad to help you out and throw lots of money at you if you start accepting it. In addition to that, sort of my main advice would be just to to look at ways that you can network with and interact with sort of other sort of small business owners and other sort of people who are interested in counter-economic ideas, right? So if you can source your supplies from other small entrepreneurs, or if you can offer ways for people who do, sort of, like people who can do distribution in areas that you can't get to, so the more trade relationships you can build up within the counter economy, I think that benefits you and it also benefits sort of other people being able to get started.
So Bitcoin, what about, maybe trading in silver also potentially, or like,
We already accept silver.
already accept silver.
What about barter?
Yeah, barter is great. The most successful barter systems tend to be those that are very, so if you've got offers just like person to person, that's very nice. It also, of course, means that it sort of takes more of it sort of takes some of the worry out of sort of accounting for the monetary medium. Typically, the best barter systems are those that are fairly extensively networked locally. So if you can hook up with like local time banks or exchange trading systems, these are systems where you have sort of a lot of people who are interested in barter and alternative forms of exchange. Then that's often some of the most helpful stuff. Is there like a time bank or a similar thing in Austin? You know?
Does anybody know?
There is. I believe there is.
Apparently so.
There is. It's the Austin Time Exchange Network. Is what it's called.
Maybe.
I'm not sure exactly how it works.
Yeah, so if you can get information on them and hook up with them, that'll be a lot of people who are interested in sort of alternative means of exchange and sort of a good way that you can sort of get started and find people with them.
Yeah, I had a question regarding your opinion on the connections between mutualism and agorism, the areas where mutualism and agorism work together, and areas where you think that could strengthen the common between the two philosophies.
Yeah, sure. So I sort of consider myself a participant in both, and so I'm pretty happy to talk about this kind of stuff. Broadly, I think some of the stuff that I said earlier. So one thing that I actually should have said during the regular question and answer period, or during the regular interview period, which is relevant to this, is that sort of the number one thing you can do to hook up with a lot of people within the social anarchist movement, in particular for making connections with them, is just find out what they're working on, like activist projects, and if there's something that you support the goals of, get involved in them, right? So, if you like Food Not Bombs, come to Food Not Bombs and, help out with it. If you like doing cop watching stuff, make connections with cop watchers, or being sort of a credible and reliable activist is typically one of the sort of top ways that you can sort of build connections with these folks. And so on the mutualist front in particular, I think that one of the big places to make connections is through sort of seeing ways in which there's sort of working on counter-economic projects that include significant aspects of trying to move away from sort of corporate commerce models and then move into more sort of grassroots mutual aid sorts of cooperation. And so stuff like Let's Networks and mutual aid projects and things like that are sort of really potentially very productive points of contact and exchange between people with mutualist ideas on one hand, people with sort of agorist ideas on the other.